The Overwatch League is just a few short weeks away, but in between that time, we can take this opportunity to look back at the preseason games, to analyze the cool things that these teams showed us both with their play and strategy. And this map between Seoul and Houston was a nail-biter. The Outlaws turned a situation where it looked like they were definitely going to get full held on first into coming back to end up winning the map, which is surprising because Horizon is a map that Seoul has looked strong on, as well as the Korean World Cup team played this map very well. So overcoming them even in the preseason is no small feat. How did this actually come about? Well, in the previous fight, both teams popped just about everything, and the only bit of utility that Seoul was going to have at the start of this fight was Munchkin's pulse bomb. An incredibly intricate outplay happens here on the backline. Bonnie baits Rawkus, as he was already ready for this flank to come in, clutches out the heal beam right in time in order to save his Zenyatta teammate from getting one-clipped, and Munchkin gets punished with the pulse bomb in his pocket. It would have been quite a value swing play to be able to one-clip the Zenyatta instead of having to use pulse bomb, but now everything flips into the Houston Outlaws' favor. As the fight brawls out, both teams are able to build up support ults, but the issue is Seoul is doing so with a man disadvantage throughout the entire fight. And after both support ults get wasted on both sides, Houston Outlaws come out on top. All really just coming down to that small interaction of Bonnie saving Rawkus, allowing him to duel the Tracer, and Munchkin getting caught with his hand in the cookie jar, trying to get a bit too much value for his flank. Now going into this B attack, Houston Outlaws only need a single tick, and they're sure to take their time to try to learn how to pick apart this defense that Seoul sets up. Linkser successfully bypasses the Widow sightline in order to backstab the Zenyatta, but FREEDO on the Widowmaker and Munchkin on the backline find purchase on their frags, thus ending this push altogether. It becomes abundantly clear that you can't let FREEDO stay there on that back perch, or he's just gonna find the mark. You have to deal with him somehow. And at this point, Houston Outlaws find themselves at quite an ultimate advantage. And when that's the case on the defense, you cannot play too defensively, or this can happen to you. The attacking team has all the leverage to press with their ultimates in their back pocket, and it would have been better for the defense to play aggressively here to find an opening, whereas turtling back, protecting their Widowmaker, just gave up the entire map within an instant. But the key player here might have passed you by if you weren't paying very close attention to the silhouettes of where the Houston Outlaws sent their resources. And this was actually quite clever. Muma bubbles the high ground for a moment in order to make some space so that the Widowmaker can't pop off anybody's heads. Houston Outlaws are avoiding the Widow lines of sight, while Jake permeates underneath in order to set up a spawn trap. Out in the distance, Muma heroically dives across the map to displace the Widowmaker sniping perch. This forces the entirety of Seoul Dynasty on the back foot. Jake presses the advantage, utilizing the space created by Muma. With them hiding in spawn, Muma knows its job well done, goes back to cap the point, and Jake's left to be able to frag out on them trying to escape out of these doors, which is nearly impossible against the Junkrat, and at such a major disadvantage, Seoul really just don't have any plays to make. Houston's squishies make themselves scarce, which is very important, something that we're going to highlight on the other side when the Seoul Dynasty are on the attack. Linkser was utilizing this truck on the low ground in order to keep himself safe. Typically staying on the high ground is best, but either way, as long as your squishies are out of harm's way, so that when the retake comes back with minimal resources, you don't end up losing that frag, and that doesn't happen. Houston Outlaws sustain, and no retake is possible, but largely because they only needed to get a tick. Of course, you would have to have said that the Outlaws were at an advantage as soon as they were able to get point, which they nearly didn't. But let's now take a look on the other side so that we can set the stage for how this was going to happen. This opening strategy from Seoul, we're not going to dig too deep into because the intricacies of it don't really pan out. It turns out to be a bit more mechanical than strategy focused. They have probably the slipperiest team comp ever with the two dive tanks, Lucia, Moira, and the time travel translocating duo of Tracer and Sombra, who are basically untouchable if you play their mobility right. So that's what they utilize in order to avoid the Junkrat spam. They catch out a frag and then swarm around the entire point. point, they clean up A without too much trouble. I'd have to imagine if the Outlaws did a better job of sustaining, building up to EMP, and then utilizing the Moira Orb and Coalescence would be a good way to cleave through this really tanky defense that the Houston Outlaws have set up. But things get far more interesting as we go into point B, where Seoul Dynasty struggle to find the answer against Jake's high-rise holding Junkrat. You don't see successful B holds from the defense quite often on this map in pro play because of the tools that the offense have to leverage against the defense, but the way that the Houston Outlaws overcome that in this situation is play really aggressive towards the high ground positioning and force a lot of commitment from Seoul to be able to get anywhere. The first problem that Seoul realize is that although they're able to utilize Toby's sound barrier, it doesn't really get any value because the Outlaws hide away from the sound barrier damage reduction sound waves, and ultimately all it does is trade 1-for-1 for the Junkrat tire. In comparison, if they ran a Mercy in that slot, well, the Valk would be able to fly up in the air, and even if the tire did get a kill, they'd be able to res it and then have strength after that point. As much as I love Lucio and I love to see him all of the time and prefer him to be back in the meta, he's just not as strong as Mercy is. Toby realizes that and swaps over to the Mercy, who can have more of a sustained impact with her ultimate, whereas Lucio is all burst, and if you don't get value out of it immediately, well, you're not going to get anything else after that. Now, moving into this next attack, Seoul actually has the pieces in order to close out a take. Rawkus used his Transcendence in the previous fight. FREEDO has Tac Visor up, which can actually counter Bonnie's Valkyrie if he plays it right. But here we can see FREEDO making the big mistake of not reading the space that his teammates were making for him. It isn't good enough to just have the high ground in this situation. The high ground is even better for stopping the oncoming retake. The tanks were trading damage. Yes, the Mercy and the Junkrat were flying in the sky. I think FREEDO was probably looking to snipe them out of the air, but being just out in the open like that left him vulnerable to get sniped by Rawkus, who's racking up the big plays in this map, one after the other. That sort of brash, pedal to the metal play that FREEDO was trying to accomplish is starkly contrasted to what Jake did, who carefully permeated the defense, making sure that he didn't take any damage on the point of contact and allowing his tanks to make the opening for him. Defending these two CP points largely comes down to taking the damage away. Supports are really slippery and hard to get a hold on, especially since Mercy can fly away. Damage characters are typically the ones that you want to target, because as long as they die, it's difficult to really have the punching power to frag out the respawn advantage that the defense is going to have. And as you can see, that one play to stop a DPS ultimate with just a skill shot really swings the ultimate economy in the defense's favor. But they try to learn their lesson. They realize that Jake gets far too much free damage fighting from this high rise, so they take a wider angle, avoid the high ground altogether, and send their dive tanks after him to flush him out of this position. Step 1 complete, but 2CP is a multifaceted mode. The win conditions sort of spiral out of control, and you have to be able to win every stage of the fight. You've succeeded in the positioning battle. Now both teams just popped their support ultimates, and we're at a sustained stalemate, except for the burst damage that can come in from the likes of an ultimate, and Cool Matt is there to deliver the self-destruct that takes out Toby from Valkyrie form. Bonnie on the Outlaws still had his Valkyrie up, and it was easy cleanup from there, which becomes a bit of a problem, because if the attacking team can't find that punching power to close out a fight, it kind of doesn't matter if they're mirroring the meta Mercy Zen comp. They have to jockey for position to have Valk when the enemy doesn't. Whereas if they both trade Valks, and more importantly, your Valk dies to an ultimate, it's largely in the defensive team's favor. But at the very least, with a big investment from both teams, now Seoul finally have an opening. The enemy defensive support ults are down, but they get picked off, stalling it out. Okay, enough of this. Let's go for a major counter strat. Munchkin swaps to the McCree, likely to deal with the backline harassment of Lynxer's Tracer, and FREEDO swaps to the Pharah with hopes of using the jetpack to go flush out Jake, and this oncoming coordinated attack works like clockwork to finally accomplish killing Jake out of this incredibly strong position. They put Jake between a rock and a hard place here. Winston in the front, Farah rocket in the back, and if he drops down, he meets a self-destruct. He was just gonna die here no matter what. A good coordinated attack finally out of Seoul, but there's still more to play for. Despite the opening being really good, Banny dying before he Valks is actually quite significant. Seoul Dynasty are in the driver's seat at this point. 3 frags on the board, time to press their advantage. But despite cleaning up the tanks quite easily, Linkser does the heroic play to be the sole man stalling the objective. This is very important. Houston Outlaws sustain and stabilize to perfection here. Bonnie pops Valk to help them get out of spawn. Linkser does some razzle-dazzle dodging techniques on the objective to be the one man against the world to stop the objective progress entirely. And Muma lets Linkser stall largely, and instead of just stalling on the point himself, he dives the backline to do damage to the McCree, and likely falling a call, Linkser changes target off the Diva on his backline to go dive the McCree. This is the opening that the Outlaws badly needed. It isn't purely staying on point in order to stop them from getting progress in these situations. You must find a kill, hopefully on one of the most exploitable targets on the team, McCree being really high on that list. And sadly, Ryo Jae Hong was helping Zumba stuff the spawn, and his Transcendence doesn't save Munchkin in time. And now the Seoul Dynasty are in crisis mode. The Houston Outlaws get a full respawn wave, the tanks come back, Cool Matt dives after FREEDO on the Farah, and the entire attack from Seoul crumbles. I know 2CP can be a major headache to play, but one thing that makes it really good is that it really punishes bad play harshly, so much so that it becomes a frustrating mode to play. But not keeping your squishy target safe on the attacking team is all the difference between a retake being successful or just failing and getting minced up. With 30 seconds left and panic setting in, Munchkin likely is quite afraid to pop this high noon on the outside, knowing that he's just been getting dove and destroyed time and time again. So he's a bit more patient on it, but that patience allows for a window for Jake to leap off of the balcony, propelling himself up to the high-rise rafters to duel FREEDO, insta-killing him with the help of a Discord orb, and again in a matter of seconds, Outlaws are able to catch the aggression that Seoul puts towards them. I think between these two sides, it was a tale of two defenses. It really showed the importance of being aggressive on defense to make sure that you don't give up too much too quickly. Because if the attacking team is allowed to hold on to the power positions of the map, it's just over. Guys, what do you think of this breakdown from this epic map between Seoul and Houston? Let me know if there's any interesting games that you would particularly like me to break down from the preseason. I have a few in mind that will be trickling out over the coming weeks, so be sure to stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave it a like because it really helps us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. If you haven't already, please subscribe because we upload each and every day, so you're gonna wanna hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Linked in the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news, updates, and dank memes. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for Your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.